Not every building wants to be seen. Some open themselves with glass and light, while others withdraw, closing their walls and guarding what lies inside. To call a house afraid of people sounds unusual, but architecture often mirrors human psychology. A facade can act like a mask, a courtyard like a private soul. Across cultures and centuries, we find homes that hide Iranian courtyard houses, Japanese tea rooms, desert kasbahs, and modern retreats. These buildings remind us that turning inward is not weakness. It is a choice to protect, to preserve, and to whisper instead of shout. Let's begin with the idea that a building can have a personality. Some buildings stand tall, open, and eager to display themselves. They face the street with wide windows, glowing facades, and a presence that demands to be noticed. These are extroverted buildings. They invite people in, or at least make no effort to hide what happens inside. But not every building behaves this way. Some turn inward, they resist exposure, and instead focus on creating an inner world, one that is more private, quiet, and hidden. This is what we mean when we talk about introverted architecture. An introverted building organizes itself around inner courtyards, gardens, or enclosed spaces. Its facades are often blank, with only small openings to the street. The walls rise high, and windows are either absent or carefully placed so that outsiders cannot look in. Walking past such a house, you might see almost nothing of the life happening inside. Yet within, there might be bright courtyards, gardens, and carefully lit rooms. Places that are full of activity and intimacy. In this sense, the building is like a person who avoids making small talk in public, but opens up deeply in private. To understand this better, think of traditional Moroccan houses, known as riads. From the outside, they appear like plain boxes, their walls almost bare, offering no hint of what lies inside. But step through the door, and you enter a courtyard filled with plants, tiled fountains, and open sky. The family life unfolds around this interior space. The outside world sees nothing. All the energy is directed inward. The house is an island of privacy in the middle of the city. A similar pattern exists in Japanese machiya, the traditional wooden townhouses found in Kyoto. These homes line narrow streets with simple closed facades. At first glance, you might even miss them. Yet behind the quiet frontage lies a sequence of small gardens, narrow halls, and rooms that lead to private spaces full of light and shadow. Here again, the house prefers to hide from public view. It does not reject visitors, but it manages what they see and where they can go. The layout channels you slowly from the street to the inner rooms, controlling how much of the family's private world is revealed. Monasteries also follow this pattern, though for different reasons. A monastery is designed for retreat and reflection, not for display. Many monasteries are arranged around cloisters, which are enclosed courtyards framed by arcades. The cloister gives monks or nuns a place to walk, meditate, or pray without stepping into the outside world. The thick walls keep out noise and distraction. Life revolves around the enclosed heart of the building, not the external facade. In this way, monasteries embody introversion at a larger collective scale. The building itself is designed to withdraw from the world, so that those inside can look inward. Modern architecture has not abandoned this idea. The Swiss architect Peter Zumthor created a striking example in the Bruder Klaus field chapel in Germany. From a distance, the chapel looks like a dark, closed mass, standing in an open field. Its exterior is plain, heavy, and almost intimidating, as though it wishes to turn away from the world. The entrance is narrow and forces visitors to slow down before entering. Once inside, the atmosphere changes completely. The interior is tall and raw, with a skylight opening to the sky. The walls, made by burning out a timber framework, are textured and alive with marks of fire. Light falls down from the opening above, shifting with the hours of the day. In this enclosed place, the outside disappears. You feel only the silence, the space, and the connection to the sky. The Bruder Klaus chapel shows how introverted architecture can transform the experience of space. The outside world is stripped away. The building does not open outward. Instead, it focuses the visitor inward, toward reflection, prayer, or contemplation. You are left alone with yourself, and the architecture supports that. The chapel hides, yet in hiding, it offers depth. If we compare this with extroverted buildings, the difference becomes clear. A glass skyscraper, for example, puts everything on display. Its identity lies in being seen from far away. The reflections of the sky, the glowing offices, the constant exposure to the city are what define it. The skyscraper engages with the outside world directly, almost aggressively, An introverted house or chapel does the opposite. It holds back, it conceals, and it values the quality of the inner environment more than the impression it makes on the street. The choice between introversion and extroversion in architecture is not only about design but also about culture and lifestyle. In places where privacy is valued, where families prefer to protect their lives from the gaze of strangers, introverted houses become the norm. In societies that prize openness, wealth display, or constant connection, extroverted buildings dominate. Both approaches respond to human needs, but in very different ways. Imagine walking through a busy street. On one side, a building of glass and steel towers above you, its walls revealing the offices inside. On the other side, a tall, solid wall hides a courtyard home. You see only the stone surface, with perhaps a single door. Which one speaks louder? The glass tower demands your attention, the courtyard house refuses it. Yet inside that hidden home, life may be fuller, calmer, more rooted in daily rhythms. This is the paradox of introverted buildings. What they conceal from the outside often enriches the inside. The concept of architectural introversion helps us see buildings not only as structures of material, but also as expressions of values and identities. A house or chapel that turns inward, chooses silence over spectacle, privacy over performance. It may seem withdrawn, but its energy is directed to nurturing inner life. Just as some people are comfortable keeping their lives private, some buildings are built to do the same. They remind us that not every presence in the world must be loud to be meaningful. When we talk about a house that is afraid of people, we are not suggesting that walls tremble or that roofs shake with fear. Instead, we are using a metaphor to describe buildings that resist exposure and prefer to retreat from public life. Just as a person might choose to avoid crowds and limit what they reveal to strangers, a house can be designed to control how much of its inner world is visible. The fear here is not about danger in a literal sense. It is about the awareness of being seen, judged, or intruded upon. A fearful house seeks protection through its very structure. Imagine walking through a neighborhood and coming across two very different homes. One is full of glass, wide terraces, and bright lights at night. Even from the street, you can see the family cooking in the kitchen, children playing in the living room, and the art on the walls. The house performs for the street, whether it wants to or not. Now picture another home, just next door. Its facade is solid, the windows small or hidden behind shutters. The entrance is tucked into a recess, almost invisible, unless you know where to look. From the outside you see little more than stone, plaster, or wood. To the passerby, the house seems silent, uninterested in sharing its life with strangers. This second house is what we might call afraid of people. It avoids unnecessary attention. The tactics of retreat in such houses are not random. They are deliberate architectural choices. Blank walls facing the street form the first line of defense. They stop wandering eyes before they can even imagine what lies behind them. These walls are not empty, but protective. They give nothing away, just as a guarded person might choose their words carefully in public. Concealed entrances are another tool. Instead of a wide gate that opens directly to the street, the doorway may be narrow, shaded, or hidden by a turn in the wall. You do not stumble into these houses. You must know where to enter, and often you must pass through several thresholds before you reach the main living space. Thresholds themselves are a powerful device. A vestibule, a corridor, or even a small courtyard can act as filters. Each layer slows down the transition from public to private. As you move inward, you leave behind the noise of the street and adjust to the quieter rhythm of the home. These spaces are not wasted. They are psychological buffers. They signal that entry is not immediate or casual. They prepare both guest and host for the encounter that follows. This layered retreat is not unique to one culture. It appears in many traditions across the world. In Islamic architecture, for instance, tall walls and twisting entrances prevent outsiders from looking directly into family courtyards. In Japanese homes, screens and sliding doors create a series of stages that regulate how much of the household is revealed. In medieval monasteries, the cloister served as a private world, reached only after moving through gates and transitional passages. In each case, the building behaves like a careful host, one who opens doors slowly, revealing only what feels safe. To make sense of this on a more personal level, think about how people behave in social settings. Some are extroverts, quick to share details of their lives, eager to meet new people, and willing to be visible. Others are introverts, cautious about opening up, preferring smaller groups, and choosing carefully when and how to engage. The introvert is not antisocial but selective. They know that too much exposure can drain them, so they set boundaries. Houses can do the same. A building that is afraid of people sets limits on what it shows, and in doing so it protects the energy of those who live inside. The idea of fear in this context is not weakness but control. A house may hide from the street, but it is not powerless. It chooses when to reveal and when to retreat. For the family inside, this means freedom. They can live without feeling watched. They can move through their home in comfort, wear what they want, and act without worrying about the gaze of outsiders. The architecture takes on the role of guardian, filtering the relationship between inside and outside. Picture yourself walking down a narrow lane in a dense city. The sound of traffic and voices fills the air. You pass a tall wall of brick, unbroken, except for a small door at one end. The door is recessed, barely visible in shadow. You push it open and step inside. Immediately, the noise of the street drops away. The walls close behind you, and a small courtyard opens up, green with plants and alive with the sound of water from a fountain. Light falls softly, and the air feels cooler. You have entered a different world. The house has led you through layers, stripping away the outside until only its inner life remains. The building has hidden its true self from the street, yet it has welcomed you into its private core. This journey is the essence of introverted architecture, and it captures what it means for a house to be afraid of people. In sound, this experience could be told with footsteps echoing on the pavement, moving past a blank wall, and then fading into silence as the listener enters a hidden courtyard. The contrast between the noise outside and the calm inside mirrors the architectural retreat. What seemed like a closed, fearful house from the street reveals itself as generous once you cross the thresholds. The fear was never about keeping everyone out. It was about creating control, a careful boundary that allows the inside to thrive without constant exposure. A house that hides behind walls, conceals its entrance, and layers its spaces is not avoiding life. It is protecting it. Like a person who values privacy, it understands that not every part of life must be seen to be full. This architectural retreat creates room for depth, intimacy, and reflection, even in the heart of a busy city, and that is why the metaphor of a house afraid of people continues to hold power. It gives shape to a way of living that resists spectacle, choosing instead the safety of silence and the richness of inner worlds. When we think of buildings, we often describe them in terms of size, material, or function. Yet buildings can also mirror human psychology. They can express moods and inner states, not in words but in form, space, and silence. Architecture can be a self-portrait, not of an individual but of collective feelings or cultural values. Some buildings speak with loud gestures. They shine with glass, reach high with steel, and declare their presence to the world. Others stay quiet, choosing retreat and enclosure, preferring to protect their interior rather than expose it. In these choices, architecture resembles the way people navigate social life. Some thrive on display, while others draw strength from silence. The idea of a building as a self-portrait suggests that space itself can embody qualities we usually attach to people. Silence in architecture is not an absence but a choice. A quiet building does not try to perform for the public. It resists the need to impress from the outside. Instead, it creates an atmosphere that asks for attention only once you enter. Retreat in architecture works in a similar way. It turns the focus inward, building layers of privacy and seclusion. The refusal to perform is not a weakness, but a form of strength. It signals that the building does not rely on being admired from the street. Its value lies in the life it shelters, the experiences it shapes, and the feelings it invites. Consider the Salk Institute in Lahore, designed by Kahn in the 1960s. From the ocean side, the complex appears monumental and still. Two identical wings face each other across a long open courtyard, with the Pacific stretching beyond. The surfaces are concrete, raw, and massive, not decorative but deliberate. The courtyard is paved with stone, marked by a single narrow channel of water running to the horizon. The building does not shout, but its silence carries weight. Walking through the courtyard, you feel the pull of the ocean and the rhythm of the geometry. It is monumental, yet not aggressive. The quiet power of the Salk Institute comes from restraint. By refusing ornament or spectacle, it achieves a presence that feels timeless. The Salk Institute is a place for scientists to work, yet Kahn gave it the dignity of a temple. The architecture reflects the psychological state of concentration and inquiry. It is not about distraction but focus. Its silence mirrors the inner focus required of research. The building itself seems to say, turn away from noise, look toward the horizon, and let the work unfold in calm. The experience of the courtyard is not just physical but emotional. It frames the ocean and the sky, reminding those inside of the scale of nature while grounding them in the order of human craft. The Salk Institute is monumental, but not in the way of a loud statue. It is quiet monumentality, a portrait of discipline and thought. A different expression of retreat appears in the Church of Light in Ibaraki, Japan, designed by Tadao Ando in 1989. From the outside, the building looks like a plain concrete box, simple in shape and closed to the street. There is nothing decorative about its walls. Enter through a narrow passage, and you find yourself in a space where light itself becomes the main material. At the end of the room, Ando cut a cross into the wall, letting natural light pour through. The interior is stark, with rough concrete surfaces and a single focus on the glowing cross of light. The effect is profound. The building does not rely on size or richness. It uses minimal means to create a sense of depth and spiritual presence. The Church of Light shows how enclosure can lead to intensity. By shutting out distractions, Ando made the light sharper and the silence more powerful. The church refuses to perform for the outside world. It keeps its meaning inside, shared only with those who step through its doors. This is a form of introversion, where the architecture holds back from external display but opens fully to inner experience. The psychological state here is not pride or spectacle, but humility and reflection. The silence of the concrete walls is not empty. It resonates with the light, turning the space into a place for contemplation. In both Kahn's and Ando's works, architecture takes on the qualities of inner life. It mirrors psychological states not by copying human behavior, but by creating spatial equivalents. Silence in the Salk Institute is achieved through monumental order and material honesty. Silence in the Church of Light is achieved through minimal form and the play of light in a dark enclosure. Both buildings refuse the urge to impress passers-by. Instead, they hold their meaning within. They wait for people to come inside, slow down and engage. Imagine walking into the Salk Institute courtyard. The sound of your steps echoes on the stone. The air is open, the horizon vast, yet the space feels enclosed by the weight of the concrete wings. Now imagine stepping into the Church of Light. The air is dim, cool against the concrete. Ahead, the cross of light cuts through the wall, almost blinding in contrast. In both places you are drawn inward. You are asked to set aside noise, chatter and distraction. The architecture frames a state of mind, focus in one case, prayer in the other. When we say architecture can be a self-portrait, we mean that it can capture human states of being, just as a portrait in painting or photography shows not only a face but also character and emotion. Architecture shows qualities of silence, retreat and strength through form and space. The refusal to perform outwardly is part of this. These buildings do not ask for approval through display. They find power in turning inward, and in doing so they reveal that architecture can embody the same psychological depths that exist in human life. In Iranian tradition, privacy is more than a preference. It is a principle deeply tied to culture, faith, and social life. The word harem carries both spiritual and architectural meaning. It signals the need for boundaries, for protected space, and for respect between people. In Islamic thought, harem is not about complete isolation. It is about defining zones of intimacy and limiting intrusion. This principle found its clearest expression in traditional houses, where architecture itself became a guardian of family life. The introverted form of Iranian houses grew from this principle. From the street, many homes in cities like Kashan or Yazd appear plain. Their facades are simple, often with mud brick or plastered walls that give away little about what lies within. To the passerby, the house looks modest, almost mute. But step inside, and the world changes. Light falls into courtyards, water pools shimmer, and rooms open in carefully ordered patterns. The plain face hides a rich and ordered interior. This contrast between exterior silence and interior life is the essence of introversion in Iranian architecture. One of the most important ways privacy shaped the home was through the division between Antaruni and Biruni. The Antaruni, or inner quarters, belonged to the family. It was where women and children lived their daily lives, away from the gaze of outsiders. The Biruni, or outer quarters, served as the more public side of the house. It was where male guests were received, where business could be discussed, and where hospitality was offered without compromising family privacy. This spatial separation ensured that intimacy remained intact while social obligations could still be met. To enforce these distinctions, architects used a range of tools. The entrance was never direct. A person stepping in from the street would not see into the courtyard. Instead, a vestibule or a bent corridor redirected movement. This ensured that the inner life of the family was never exposed by the sudden opening of a door. The vestibule often served as a pause, a place where visitors waited until invited further. Corridors played the role of filters, slim passages that turned the body away from direct sightlines and created a sense of transition. High walls around the house reinforced the idea of harem. These walls blocked noise, dust, and most importantly, the gaze of strangers. Within these boundaries, families could live freely, with women able to move without the fear of being watched from the street. Windows facing outward were rare. When they did exist, they were often covered with latticework known as shabaks. These lattices let in light and air, but shielded the inside from view. From within, one could look out. From the street, no one could see in. This one-way relationship between inside and outside captured the cultural balance of privacy and connection. Internal gardens and courtyards brought nature into the heart of the house. Since gardens could not face the street, they were enclosed within walls. Trees, plants and pools cooled the air, and created spaces for rest and gathering. In hot, dry climates, these courtyards acted as lungs for the house, offering ventilation and shade. More importantly, they gave families an outdoor life without exposure to outsiders. Children could play, women could gather, and men could rest, all within the safety of the harem. The courtyard was not just a design element, but a cultural solution, joining climate needs with spiritual and social values. Two famous examples in Kashan show how these principles took shape in grand form: the Barragán house and the Tadao house. Built in the 19th century, these homes belonged to wealthy merchant families, yet they followed the same cultural rules as smaller houses. The Barragán house is known for its striking domes and wind catchers, but what matters for privacy is how its spaces are organized. The entrance leads into a winding vestibule, ensuring that the courtyard remains hidden. The Baruni spaces are arranged for hosting guests, with large halls decorated with murals and stucco. Beyond these lies the Anjuruni, quieter and more intimate, where the family lived away from outsiders. The transition between the two is managed carefully, with thresholds that control movement and vision. The Tadao house expands on this logic with even more elaborate courtyards. It has several, each serving different functions. Some belong to the Anjuruni, reserved for family. Others belong to the Baruni, designed for formal gatherings. The courtyards are linked by corridors and vestibules, so movement between them respects the boundaries of privacy. From the outside, the house still appears plain, but inside it reveals a rich system of separation and connection. Light, water and gardens are all directed inward, never outward. The design makes a clear statement. Family life is protected first, hospitality follows second. Walking through these houses, one feels how strongly privacy and introversion guide every choice. Even the smallest details reflect this. Doors often had two knockers, one for men and one for women, each with a distinct sound. This allowed those inside to know who was at the door, and prepare accordingly. Guest rooms were positioned so that visitors could be entertained without entering family quarters. Stairs and upper rooms were placed to prevent sightlines into private spaces. Nothing was accidental. Every element of design served the principle of harem. The effect of this system was not isolation but balance. Families could live with dignity and freedom inside their homes, while still honoring the cultural duty of hospitality. Guests were received warmly in the Baruni, but the sanctity of the Anjuruni was never compromised. Architecture managed these relationships, shaping social behavior through space. The introverted nature of these houses was not about hiding in fear. It was about building trust, comfort and control in daily life. Traditional Iranian houses remind us that architecture can embody values as strongly as it embodies materials. Their walls, vestibules and courtyards are not just physical barriers but cultural expressions of how life should be lived. The harem, the Anjuruni, and the Baruni were not abstract ideas, they were lived realities, made possible by spaces that turned inward and kept the outside world at a respectful distance. Through these choices, the houses of Kashan and many others across Iran became portraits of a society that valued privacy as a sacred right, woven into the very fabric of the home. In the town of Gudiatham in southern India, a sharp divide exists between the wealthy leather factory owners and those who struggle below the poverty line. This divide creates more than just economic tension, it generates curiosity. People on the street wonder what life inside the grander houses looks like. The homes of the rich become stages, and their facades are like curtains that strangers long to pull back. For families living in such a context, the question is not only how to build shelter, but how to protect dignity and privacy. It is here that DS2 architecture created what they call an introvert house, a design that hides in plain sight and resists the gaze of the world outside. The family that commissioned the house came from an Orthodox Muslim background. Their daily life centered on the home, not the street. Women rarely ventured out, and the rhythms of family life unfolded in private. For them, architecture had to provide more than comfort. It had to shield. The home could not afford to be a spectacle for outsiders. Instead, it needed to create an internal world where daily life could flourish without interruption. This challenge was not new in architectural history. Traditional Islamic and Iranian houses had solved it centuries earlier through courtyards, high walls, and careful zoning. What DS2 did was to translate those principles into a contemporary form, tailored to the social and climatic realities of Gudiatham. From the street, the introvert house makes a strong first impression, not through decoration but through defense. A stone wall curves along the front setback, forming a buffer between the public world and the home. This wall serves several purposes. It blocks direct views into the house, creates shade against the harsh sun, and offers a sense of permanence. It is not decorative stone cladding, but a barrier that declares this house will not be looked into. The wall is both shield and statement. To passers-by, it reads as a closed face. To those inside, it becomes the boundary that makes freedom possible. Beyond the wall, the architects organized the plan around internal greenery. Instead of placing gardens in front of the house where they could be admired from the street, they pulled them inward. Courtyards, both large and small, were carved out of the plan to act as lungs. Narrow proportions and double height spaces ensured that the hot, dry climate would not overwhelm them. Sunlight enters indirectly, keeping the air cooler, while cross-ventilation moves through the open voids. These courtyards provide relief from heat, but they also become everyday landscapes for the family. Children play there, adults sit casually, and the entire household experiences nature without the fear of being seen. Inside, the rooms open toward these internal courts rather than the street. The living spaces, kitchen and bedrooms all look inward, turning their attention away from the public world. This orientation ensures that privacy is not compromised. The family can carry out their daily activities in comfort, knowing that no outsider can watch them. The design aligns with their cultural preference for seclusion, where women in particular should be able to move about the house without the worry of exposure. The house thus becomes not only a structure, but an extension of their values. Hospitality, however, still matters. The DS2 house provides for guests, but in a way that protects family life. A guest room sits on the upper floor, oriented toward the road yet carefully screened by louvers and a door. This allows visitors to enjoy their stay while ensuring that the family maintains control. When guests are absent, the space does not go unused. It transforms into a play area for children, or a corner for tea. In this flexibility, the house balances openness and retreat. Guests are welcomed, but only within limits set by the architecture. The material choices support this theme of balance. Instead of polished marble, which often signals wealth and spectacle, the floors combine black granite and wood. These materials are durable, modest and warm. The use of stone as a barricade adds to the sense of strength. Even the skylight above the main courtyard follows the same logic. It opens to let in natural light and even rain, but it remains part of the inner life of the house, not a display to the street. Walking through the house, one experiences a rhythm of withdrawal and openness. The foyer and living room connect inwardly, not outward. The kitchen opens to its own small court. Bedrooms enjoy light and air through private cutouts. The main court acts as the binding element, linking family zones together. At every step, the house turns away from the outside world and folds back on itself. Yet this is not isolation. It is an active design choice that resists surveillance while enriching internal life. The introvert house is a modern echo of traditional Islamic courtyard homes. In Kashan, Iran, houses like the Barragán and Tadao families once lived by similar principles. Their entrances bent around corners, Courtyards pulled light into the heart and high walls shielded family life. DS2 carries this legacy forward, showing that the same cultural needs exist today, even in a small Indian town. The context may differ, but the desire for privacy, control and dignity remains. By adapting the courtyard model to modern construction and local climate, the architects created a house that speaks both to tradition and to present concerns. Imagine approaching the house from the street. You see a stone wall curving like a shield. There is no wide display of wealth, no garden on show, no windows staring back at you. You walk along the wall, perhaps curious about what lies behind. Then, if invited inside, you pass through a threshold and find yourself in a courtyard filled with greenery. Light filters in, the air is cooler, and the noise of the outside world drops away. The house reveals its generosity only within its chosen boundaries. For those allowed in, it is welcoming. For those outside, it remains silent. This is what it means to hide in plain sight. The DS2 Introvert House proves that architecture can act as resistance. It resists the demand to perform wealth on the street. It resists the surveillance of a curious neighborhood. It resists the climate by shaping its own micro-environment inside. In doing so, it honors the needs of its occupants. It shows that sometimes the best way for a house to live is not by opening itself to the world but by turning inward, creating a sanctuary that thrives by refusing to be seen. Hospitality has always been a central part of how houses are designed. Across cultures, families welcome relatives, neighbors or strangers into their homes, yet they rarely open every corner of the house. Instead, architecture manages hospitality by drawing lines. Some rooms are for guests, some for family, and some for both depending on the occasion. These divisions are not only practical but symbolic. They show respect to visitors while protecting the dignity and privacy of the household. In this way, buildings act as hosts. They include and exclude, sometimes in subtle ways, shaping how social life unfolds. The DS2 Introvert House in Gudiathan provides a clear example of this practice in the modern world. The family who lives there values privacy deeply, yet they also understand that hospitality is an obligation. To balance these two, the architects designed a guest room upstairs at the front of the house. On the surface it seems like a simple decision: put the guest near the entrance away from the family's private spaces. But the way this space is arranged shows how carefully openness is controlled. The room faces the street, but louvers and a door keep it screened. Guests have their own defined space with views toward the road and access to a terrace. At the same time, their movement into the family's daily life is limited. When guests stay, they are welcomed with comfort. When they leave, the room becomes something else: a play space for children, a tea corner, a flexible zone that serves the household. The design recognizes that hospitality is temporary, while family life is constant. This approach has deep echoes in Iranian tradition. In historic houses of Kashan, the separation between Baruni and Denaruni was one of the most important principles. The Baruni was the outer section, designed for receiving male guests, conducting business, or hosting formal gatherings. It often contained large halls with ornate decoration, projecting the family's status to outsiders. The Nanaruni was the inner quarter, reserved for family and especially women. The two zones were connected, but carefully divided by thresholds, corridors, and sometimes entire courtyards. A visitor might spend hours in the Baruni without ever seeing the Anaruni. In this way, the house offered hospitality while protecting private life. Walking into a house like the Tabatabaray residence in Kashan, you see this arrangement at work. Guests would first enter through a vestibule and be led toward a large hall in the Baruni. They might be served tea, entertained with music, or engaged in conversation. The hall itself was grand with painted walls and high ceilings, but behind this show lay the Anaruni, a quieter world where daily life unfolded, invisible to outsiders. Even if the guest looked across a courtyard, high walls and screen windows prevented them from seeing more than what was intended. Hospitality was real, but it was selective, carefully framed by the architecture. Moroccan riads used a different but related method. In these courtyard houses, salons lined the central garden. Each salon could be opened or closed with doors and shutters, depending on the visitor. A guest might be welcomed into one salon close to the entrance, given a view of the courtyard and perhaps offered food and conversation, but access to other salons or upper floors would be restricted. The courtyard itself was a stage for hospitality, yet the deeper life of the house remained hidden. The arrangement allowed families to host while maintaining control. As in Iranian homes, inclusion was never total. the house always kept part of itself private. The DS2 house belongs to this lineage of controlled openness. Its guest room upstairs functions like a modern baruni, positioned at the edge of the house. It gives visitors a place of honor without exposing the family's everyday routines. The louvers act like the lattice screens of Kashan, allowing air and light but managing sightlines. The door that separates the guest zone ensures that the courtyard behind remains for family first. When no visitors are present, the space reverts to the household, reinforcing that hospitality is only part of the story. This flexibility shows how architecture adapts ancient principles to modern needs. To imagine the difference this makes, picture two scenarios. In one, a guest arrives at a house with no zoning. They walk through the front door and immediately see the living room, where the family eats, plays and rests. Their presence changes the atmosphere. Family members must adjust, become formal, and hide parts of their routine. In the other scenario, the guest arrives at a house like the DS2 design. They are directed to their own space, where they are welcomed warmly, but without disturbing the rhythm of daily life. The family remains comfortable, and the guest feels honored. The architecture itself has managed the balance between inclusion and exclusion. In Kashan's houses, this same balance was seen in the use of multiple courtyards. One courtyard might be dedicated to the baruni, another to the enaruni. Guests enjoyed one, family enjoyed the other. The two worlds existed side by side, but the line between them was carefully guarded. The DS2 house reduces this system into a simpler form, one courtyard and one guest zone, but the principle is the same. Hospitality is offered with respect, yet always on the family's terms. This approach highlights how houses are never neutral. They are active participants in social life. By shaping space, they shape behavior. They decide how far a guest can go, what they can see, and how much of the family's life is shared. The Introvert House shows that even in the present day, architecture can embody this role with clarity. It manages the tension between openness and protection, making hospitality not a burden but a controlled gift. In doing so, it reminds us that welcoming others does not mean giving everything away. It means choosing how and when to open the door, a decision that architecture can make possible through design. Houses and buildings across the world have always found ways to hide. Some do so for safety, some for privacy, and some for the quiet joy of turning inward. The strategies vary depending on culture, climate, and faith, but the impulse is the same. People build walls, layers, and screens not only to protect themselves from weather or strangers, but also to shape a way of life. Architecture becomes a shield and a frame for living. To understand how widespread this idea is, one can look at traditions as different as Moroccan riads, Japanese tea houses, monastic cloisters, desert kasbahs, and even modern experiments like villavals in Switzerland. Each speaks of a desire to hide in plain sight. The Moroccan riad is a classic example of this introverted form. From the street, a riad often looks plain, with little more than a door in a blank wall. Passers-by might never guess what lies inside. Yet once you cross the threshold, the house opens into a courtyard filled with light, trees and a fountain. All rooms face inward, so the family lives around the garden instead of the street. This arrangement protects privacy and shields life from outside eyes, but it also creates beauty that is only visible to those allowed in. The outer wall is not hostile, it simply acts as a mask. Inside, hospitality flourishes. Guests are invited into salons that look onto the courtyard, where the sound of water and the sight of greenery create calm. In this way the riad hides from the city, while offering a rich world within. Japanese tea houses work with a different but related logic. Built often in gardens, they are small and unassuming, with entrances so low that guests must bow to enter. The path to the tea house is part of the ritual, winding through trees and stones, leading the visitor away from the everyday world. Once inside, the space is simple, sometimes even austere, with tatami mats and paper screens. The walls keep distractions out, focusing attention on the act of sharing tea. Here, hiding is not only from others, but from the noise of life itself. The tea house turns away from the world to create a space of intimacy and reflection. The building acts almost like a cocoon, small and plain but holding meaning within. Monastic cloisters also embody the logic of retreat. In monasteries, the cloister is a square or rectangular courtyard surrounded by covered walkways. Monks walk the cloister for prayer and reflection, shielded from the outside world. The walls of the monastery often rise high, closing off the community from the surrounding town or countryside. Inside, however, the cloister provides light, air, and order. Its repetition of arches and its still garden create an atmosphere of silence. Here the strategy of hiding is about guarding the spiritual life from intrusion. The cloister is both an inward focus and a shared rhythm, a space where retreat is not loneliness but collective devotion. In desert landscapes, kasbahs carry the same principle, but in a form adapted to harsh climates. These fortified houses, often made of thick mud walls, look like strongholds. From outside, their walls are tall and windowless, resisting both the sun and the gaze of strangers. Inside, however, they open into courtyards that give shade and allow air to circulate. The kasbahs use their defensive form not only to guard against raids but also to control the environment. Their walls absorb heat during the day and release it at night, creating comfort. Like the riad, the kasbahs hides beauty and life within, showing little to the passerby. Its face is turned inward, not out, as if the house itself does not wish to be seen. The Alhambra in Granada expands this inward luxury to a royal scale. From the outside, the complex presents fortified walls and towers, a reminder of military strength. But step inside and the world changes. Courtyards with reflecting pools, intricate tile work, carved stucco, and delicate arches unfold in layers. The famous Court of the Lions is a perfect example. Enclosed on all sides, filled with columns, water and shadow, it is an introverted paradise. The Alhambra shows how inwardness can be more than practical. It can be an art of concealment, a way to create worlds of refinement hidden behind simple exteriors. The contrast between outside plainness and inside richness is part of the experience. The building hides not only from enemies, but also from the vulgarity of display. Modern architecture also finds ways to hide, though in new forms. Villa Vals in Switzerland offers a striking case. Built into a hillside near the famous thermal baths of Vals, the house is invisible from above. From the valley, you see only a circular cut in the slope, with windows looking out. The rest of the house is buried within the mountain. This design preserves the natural landscape while giving the inhabitants privacy and protection. Entering the villa feels like entering a hidden retreat carved into the earth. Unlike the riad or kasbah, the hiding here is not only from people, but also for the sake of the land. The house blends into its setting, becoming almost invisible. It is as if the mountain itself agreed to host the house within its body. These examples show that the act of hiding in architecture is not a marginal practice, but a universal one. Each culture finds its own way of turning inward, whether through courtyards, cloisters, gardens or earthworks. The reasons vary: protection, privacy, climate, ritual, but the outcome is similar. Life unfolds away from the gaze of outsiders. The building becomes a shell, a mask or a veil, giving space for those inside to live fully without constant exposure. Imagine walking through a city of riads. From the street, you pass wall after wall, door after door. The city feels closed, almost forbidding. But behind each door, there might be fountains, mosaics and laughter. The street is not the measure of life there. The hidden courtyards are, or picture approaching a tea house in a Japanese garden. The noise of the town fades as you follow the stepping stones. By the time you enter the small hut, you feel as though the outside world has been left behind. The building has hidden you not only from others, but from your own distractions. Or think of Villa Vals, where you walk across a grassy slope, seeing no house until a round opening appears. You descend, step inside, and find yourself in a space as warm and domestic as any, yet invisible to those above. The universal strategy is clear. Hiding does not mean absence. It means shaping visibility with care. A house that hides is not less of a house. It is a different kind of presence, one that chooses its relationship to the world. In Morocco, Japan, Spain or Switzerland, the impulse is the same: to create space where life can unfold safely, quietly, and on its own terms. Architecture, in these cases, becomes a partner in the act of retreat, offering walls and layers not to exclude life, but to protect its depth. Withdrawal in architecture carries a deep tension. At first glance, it may look like fear, the refusal to face the world, the building that turns its back. A house with high walls, small windows, and hidden entrances can seem to reject its surroundings. But step inside such a place, and another reading emerges. Withdrawal can be wisdom. It can be the recognition that the world is noisy, that life outside presses too hard, and that space must sometimes be sheltered for people to breathe. In this sense, a building that withdraws is not only hiding but listening. It listens to the needs of its inhabitants, and shields them from the burdens of exposure. The line between fear and wisdom is fine. Fear builds barricades out of panic. Wisdom builds walls, as instruments of care. Both produce distance, but one is reactive while the other is intentional. Imagine a house on a busy street that opens itself wide, with glass facades. Its residents live on display, their daily rhythms visible to strangers passing by. For some, that openness may feel liberating. For others, it may become a weight, a constant sense of being watched. In contrast, a house with layered courtyards and veiled windows allows its occupants to choose when and how they interact with the outside. It does not reject contact but controls it. In this way, withdrawal becomes a form of strength. It is not the house that trembles at the world, but the house that knows how to balance closeness and distance. Architects have long understood this duality. In some cases, withdrawal has been built as self-defense. City walls, fortified gates, and stone keeps all speak of a time when danger was real and protection was necessary. The medieval castle is an obvious example. Its thick walls, moats and towers are forms of withdrawal from threat. Yet even in more peaceful times, similar forms appear. They express not military fear, but psychological need. A courtyard house in Iran, with its underuni hidden from the street, protects the family's intimacy. A riad in Morocco shields life from the eyes of neighbors, while creating an inner paradise. A tea house in Japan closes itself off to focus on ritual. These buildings withdraw not because of enemies, but because the inner life deserves protection. The language of withdrawal in architecture overlaps with the language of contemplation. Silence, shadow, and enclosure create atmospheres that invite thought. Tadao Ando's Church of Light in Osaka is a telling example. The church is a plain concrete box cut by a single cross of light. It closes itself from the outside world, so that what remains inside is the encounter of darkness and illumination. The building withdraws, but not in fear, it withdraws to focus the spirit. Likewise, Peter Zumthor's Bruder Klaus Chapel in Germany is a tower-like form with an interior charred into silence. Its entrance is narrow, its walls thick, its ceiling open to the sky. To enter is to leave behind the everyday. Withdrawal here is a path to stillness, a reminder that architecture can be a tool for inner vision. Houses themselves often become metaphors for the soul. Literature and philosophy have used this language for centuries. A house with many rooms can represent a life with many layers. A locked door can symbolize secrets or trauma. A courtyard can mirror the inner garden of reflection. When a building withdraws, it suggests a soul that has turned inward, but again this can mean different things. An anxious soul hides out of fear, a reflective soul withdraws to understand. The metaphor works both ways. We see the character of a person in the spaces they build, and we see the logic of architecture in the metaphors we use for human life. Consider the DS2 Introvert House in Gudiatham. Its high stone walls, internal courts and careful zoning are strategies of retreat. On the surface the house appears afraid of the gaze of neighbors, who might be curious about the wealth of its owners. Yet inside, it becomes a refuge where daily life unfolds freely, without constant worry about outside judgment. In this reading, the house is not timid, it is wise. It shields its inhabitants so they can live fully. The poetics of withdrawal in this case are practical and symbolic at once. The house teaches that turning away from the world can sometimes be the most humane act. Sound design helps make this visible. Imagine the noise of the street outside a house. Motorbikes, chatter, vendors calling out, the constant hum of life. Now step through a vestibule into a shaded courtyard. The sound shifts. The courtyard holds the gurgle of a fountain, the rustle of leaves, perhaps the faint call of birds. The contrast is profound. The act of withdrawal becomes not only visual but acoustic. Silence, or the controlled presence of sound, reinforces the inward turn. The architecture shapes an atmosphere where the world softens and life inside gains depth. Withdrawal also changes how time is felt. In open houses, time is tied to the rhythms of the street, to visitors, deliveries and public events. In withdrawn houses, time slows. The courtyard marks the hours with shadows and light. The fountain or pool reflects the sky. The architecture itself becomes a clock and a calendar, quiet but steady. This rhythm supports contemplation. It gives those inside a sense of being anchored, not to public life but to the cycle of nature. Again, the building acts not from fear but from wisdom. It aligns life with a more enduring order. At its deepest level, withdrawal in architecture suggests a philosophy of boundaries. Boundaries are not only barriers, they are also conditions for freedom. A wall does not simply keep others out, it makes possible a protected inside. A screen does not only conceal, It filters what enters, letting in light or air while preserving dignity. The poetics of withdrawal lie in this delicate balance. Buildings remind us that to live well we must sometimes turn inward, not as a refusal of the world but as a way to meet it on our own terms. Think of a cloister garden in a monastery. Monks walk slowly around it, silent, enclosed, focused. The world outside continues, with markets, wars or noise, but inside the cloister another order holds. Or think of a house in Kashan, where the family spends evenings around the Ando courtyard, shaded from the desert sun. Their voices echo softly off stucco walls. To a stranger outside, the house is a blank surface. To those inside, it is a universe. These moments show that withdrawal is not emptiness but presence, not denial but concentration. The poetics of withdrawal lie in this tension. Fear and wisdom both build walls, but their meaning shifts depending on how we inhabit them. A building afraid of people hides itself away. A building wise in its retreat protects the life inside. In both we sense the soul of architecture, speaking in silence, shadow and enclosure. A fountain in a courtyard, a soft wind moving through trees, a shaft of light across a wall. All these remind us that retreat can hold beauty, and that in architecture, as in life, turning inward may be the most profound gesture. In the cities of today, glass towers rise as if they want to erase the line between inside and outside. They reflect the sky, the horizon, and the movement of clouds. Their facades are celebrated as symbols of transparency and openness. Yet for those who live or work inside, glass often turns into exposure. Offices in high-rises place workers under constant daylight and the gaze of the skyline. Apartments framed with floor-to-ceiling windows are sold as luxuries, yet their residents are forced to live in sight of everyone across the street. Transparency can become surveillance. The modern city, full of reflective glass, reduces privacy to a rare commodity. In response, introverted houses stand as a counter-argument. They turn away from the culture of visibility and propose another value sanctuary. A house that closes itself off may not be making a stylistic choice, but a statement about how life can be lived. In an age where digital networks and urban density blur the boundary between public and private, the architecture of withdrawal takes on new relevance. It asserts that people still need walls, shadows, and enclosed gardens. These are not nostalgic desires but urgent needs, tied to mental health and well-being. The pressure of visibility in contemporary life is not only architectural. Social media has amplified it. People broadcast their homes, meals, and travels to unknown audiences. Privacy is traded for approval. In this climate, the idea of a house afraid of people becomes a metaphor for resistance. It refuses the demand to be seen. Just as an introvert may choose silence over display, a building may choose enclosure over exposure. This refusal is not weakness. It is a strategy to preserve depth in a world that demands surface. Sanctuary design has emerged as an essential topic in the 21st century. Architects are asked not only to house people but to protect them from overstimulation. A sanctuary is not a luxury spa. It is a condition of peace, where the mind can reset. Spaces that are quiet, filtered, and inward become tools of mental health. Courtyards, skylights, and gardens enclosed within walls offer calm without cutting off the natural world. They frame the sky in controlled glimpses, allowing nature to enter without chaos. A small pool reflecting light or a patch of bamboo rustling in the wind can become more restorative than any open view of the city. Barragán understood this long before contemporary psychology gave it new language. His Casa Gilardi in Mexico City is an example of introverted architecture in the modern age. From the street, the house reveals almost nothing. Its walls are plain, silent, anonymous. Step inside, and the sequence of spaces opens in controlled layers. Color becomes a tool of emotion, blue, pink, yellow, arranged to deepen experience. A small pool inside the house reflects the play of light on the walls. The garden is enclosed, not exposed. Life here is not a spectacle for outsiders. It is an inward journey, staged through space, light, and texture. Casa Gilardi demonstrates that privacy and beauty can coexist, that withdrawal need not mean austerity. It shows how architecture can create richness by turning away from the street and focusing on the life within. Another striking example is the Invisible House in California. Built as a mirrored box in the desert, it appears to disappear into its landscape. The mirrored facade reflects rocks, sand, and sky, camouflaging the house from view. Here, privacy is not achieved through enclosure, but through mimicry. The house hides by becoming indistinguishable from its surroundings. It plays with the idea of visibility by turning it back on itself. To the outside, it is a reflection. To the inside, it is a space of retreat, where glass walls face vast desert expanses but feel detached because the building itself cannot be easily seen. In this way, the invisible house demonstrates another approach to sanctuary, one that blends with its environment so completely that it avoids notice. These case studies show how introversion in architecture continues to evolve. In dense urban environments, the tactic is to create inward sanctuaries through walls and courtyards, as Barragán did. In isolated landscapes, the tactic may be camouflage, as seen in California. Both strategies respond to the same need, the need to control exposure in a world that seems to demand constant openness. The tension between glass skyscrapers and introverted homes is not just aesthetic, it is cultural. Glass towers symbolize speed, commerce, and performance. They assume that being visible is a virtue, that transparency is a form of honesty, but for the individual, life in such structures can erode privacy and overwhelm the senses. Introverted houses symbolize another value, the right to retreat, to protect the rhythms of domestic life from intrusion. This cultural contrast will likely grow sharper as cities become denser and technology further erodes personal boundaries. The relevance of introverted design also extends to collective well-being. In workplaces, schools and hospitals, there is a growing recognition that environments shape stress levels. Too much glass, noise and openness can increase anxiety. Small enclosed gardens, quiet alcoves, and courtyards can lower it. The design of sanctuary is not only for homes but for the places where people spend most of their lives. Architecture that embraces withdrawal can make these environments healthier. Consider the example of a family in a city apartment with full glass walls. At first, the openness seems attractive, views of the skyline, natural light throughout the day, but after months the glare of sun becomes harsh. The sense of being looked at from across the street becomes unsettling. Curtains are drawn, but then the openness feels wasted. Compare this with a family in a courtyard house, where rooms open to an internal garden, light enters from above, but it is softened by trees and filtered by walls. Privacy is preserved. The family can use the garden in casual clothes without worry. The comparison highlights how design choices affect everyday life at a deep level. Architecture today has the chance to reflect on these lessons. The house that withdraws does not resist modernity, it redefines it. In an age where exposure has become the norm, withdrawal becomes radical. The poetics of walls, courtyards and reflections gain new meaning when seen against the backdrop of glass towers and digital screens. They are no longer just formal devices. They are strategies for living. The house afraid of people speaks directly to the needs of the 21st century. It reminds us that fear and wisdom can overlap, that retreat can be both protection and reflection. Whether in Mexico City, where Barragán painted silence in color, or in the California desert, where glass hides by reflecting sand, the lesson is the same. To preserve the inner life, architecture must sometimes turn away from the world. The future of architecture may not be found in taller towers or brighter facades, but in quieter forms that return to older lessons. Traditional introverted houses, whether in Iran, Morocco, Japan or India, were not experiments in style. They were answers to basic needs, the desire for privacy, the control of climate, and the preservation of cultural memory. These houses demonstrate how buildings can face inward to protect life, rather than outward to perform for strangers. For architects today, these traditions hold more relevance than ever. Privacy has become a rare resource. In many cities, apartments are stacked with windows facing each other across narrow streets. The idea of home as a private world grows fragile, yet when we look at a Moroccan riad or an Iranian courtyard house, we see a system designed to keep the intimate life of a family protected. The street receives a blank wall, while the interior unfolds into shaded gardens, pools and rooms around a central court. The logic is clear. Life should not be on display, but sheltered. Modern architecture often resists this logic, equating openness with freedom, but it is worth asking whether that freedom comes at the expense of peace. An introverted plan offers not only seclusion, but dignity. Climate is another force that shaped these houses. Thick walls, high ceilings and courtyards were not only cultural choices, but environmental strategies. A desert Kasbah, or a house in Kashan, demonstrates how design manages heat without machines. Courtyards pull air downward, pools and gardens cool it, and latticed screens filter light. These devices belong to a sustainable intelligence that does not depend on electricity, but on form and material. As climate change reshapes how people live, The return to such strategies is not nostalgia, but necessity. The future cannot rely only on mechanical solutions. It must rediscover the architectural techniques that allowed buildings to adapt to harsh conditions with elegance. Cultural memory lives in these forms as well. A courtyard is not only a technical device but a space for rituals. Families gather, children play, meals are shared, and the cycle of seasons is felt within its walls. Architecture becomes the stage for memory, carrying values across generations. When architects today adopt introverted strategies, they are not only solving practical problems, but also linking the present to this deeper heritage. A house that hides itself preserves more than the family inside. It preserves ways of living that resist erasure by global sameness. The house that hides is not always afraid. It can hide to protect values that are fragile in a noisy world. It can protect silence, which is rare in cities filled with engines and screens. It can protect shadow, which modern design often discards in favor of constant light. It can protect slowness, when life outside demands speed. Withdrawal here is not rejection but care. It is the care of guarding what cannot survive exposure. A building that turns inward can do so not to escape, but to hold something safe until it can be appreciated. For the architect, the lesson is restraint. It is easy to design facades that impress, towers that proclaim presence, or houses that open fully to the street. Harder is the design that chooses silence, that refuses spectacle, that whispers instead of shouts. Such architecture relies on patience and on trust in the richness of interior life. It values sequence, shadow, and pause over instant recognition. To walk into such a house is to move slowly from threshold to courtyard, from shaded corridor to garden. The experience builds inward rather than outward, asking visitors to leave behind the noise of the street. Imagine a neighborhood in the future shaped by these ideas. Instead of towers of glass, streets are lined with walls that appear plain from the outside. Trees rise above the walls, hinting at hidden gardens within. Entrances are modest, sometimes concealed, leading through layered thresholds that filter sound and light. Inside, houses open to air and greenery, cooled by water and shaded by trees. Roofs gather rain, walls store heat in winter, and gardens supply fruit. The street remains calm, while life within is vibrant. This vision is not utopia, but continuity, built on traditions that already exist. Contemporary projects already point in this direction. Houses buried into hillsides in Switzerland, desert homes that reflect their surroundings in California, or compact courtyard houses in India, all suggest that the language of introversion is alive. Each adapts old strategies to new materials, but the principle remains protection before display, experience before spectacle. The act of hiding becomes a statement of value. Even technology can serve this principle, if used with care. Smart systems can regulate airflow, monitor light, and store energy. Yet the deeper intelligence lies not in sensors, but in the placement of a wall or the proportion of a courtyard. Architecture's future may depend less on new inventions and more on the recovery of this quiet wisdom. To design an introverted house today is to affirm that tradition still has force, that old patterns can carry us forward. There is also a moral weight in this choice. A city filled with glass towers encourages constant comparison, constant visibility, and constant consumption. A city filled with introverted houses encourages reflection, moderation, and continuity. The first shouts its presence, while the second holds back, preserving silence. As density increases and technology intrudes further into private life, the role of architecture as a shield becomes more urgent. The architect is not only a designer of forms but a guardian of boundaries. In this way, the house that hides carries a lesson for the future of culture as well as construction. It shows that not all values thrive under light. Some require enclosure, some require the patience of shadows, the rhythm of doors, and the pause of a threshold. The wisdom of introverted houses is that they do not only shelter bodies, they shelter ways of life that would otherwise vanish. When we speak of architecture that whispers, we mean buildings that do not compete with noise but add depth to silence. They offer spaces where the mind can turn inward, where families can preserve intimacy, where communities can pass on traditions without distortion. The house that hides is not a coward, but a keeper. It teaches us that the most enduring forms of architecture are those that choose protection over spectacle.